I'm Madison of Earth and Sea, and I'm really excited to interview you both for your upcoming exciting workshops and the ways in which you're showing up for somatics and conflict and eroticism and tantra and all the wonderful work you're doing. Um, Maybe a good place to start is sharing a little bit about yourselves. Who are you both?
Thanks so much, Madison. It's so wonderful to be with you all here today. My name is Laure. My pronouns are she, they, and I founded a platform called the Unconventional Plutonian back in the start of the pandemic in 2020 as a space to reimagine and help empower who we are and express the fullness of who we are as individuals, but also within community. And so I blend a lot of the different passion sets and modalities and skill sets that I have around astrology and conflict resolution practicing and storytelling and now kink education to help people with expressing the fullness of who they are. So that's why I'm here. Hannah, how about you?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Madison. Thanks, Laura. I'm Hannah, and I am the creatrix behind Enchanted Eros and Enchanted Life Design. And my work in the world is really around embodiment and living in full connection with our Eros as that unfurls through our creativity, through our relationships, and through our relationship with sexuality. And one of my favorite things to do is to combine myth and storytelling with sensuality and eroticism, so that we can really get to know the deeper parts of ourselves and find creative ways to let those spaces breathe. So happy to be here.
Beautiful. What incredible work you both do. I am curious, would you share a little bit more? I know you have an upcoming course. What is the erotic underworld?
Mm. Well, the erotic underworld is an initiatory descent that we're taking people through as an 8-week virtual course that will end in an in-person retreat opportunity to join the Mindful Kink Retreat in Virginia. And the course itself is centered around exploring our inner psyche from the lens of understanding our different erotic archetypes and the different wants and desires that these parts of us hold. And then learning the somatic and kink skills to be able to actually bring these parts of ourselves through storytelling, through embodied scene crafting, and really just strengthening our capacity to speak to our needs, our desires, our fears, and our boundaries, so that we don't have to be so afraid to let these parts of ourselves be seen. So this is, to me, is what the erotic underworld is. Laure, would you like to speak to your thoughts and feels around it too?
Yeah, first of all, second to everything you said. That's such a brilliant capture. And I think for me, the erotic underworld is also a space of rewilding and looking at the ways in which we can liberate the stories that live inside of us and bring them out into the world. And there's a lot of uncovering of the stories that aren't ours or are outdated or were given to us by family, by, former relationships, by our society's dominant paradigms, and that take up space inside of us and make it difficult to be the fullness of who we are, to allow ourselves to breathe into those parts of ourselves that feel shameful, that feel forbidden, that feel like they've been exiled, that feel like they've been put down or embarrassed or told they're too much or whatever there is around that. This course came from that deep vulnerable space of wanting to free up those parts of ourselves so they can be brilliant in the world, so they can take up more space inside of us. And also, this course is really something unique in the sense that, we'll get into it for sure, but Hannah and I have been navigating through our different pathways in this journey, and seen a lot of different types of courses. And, for me, I've been in a variety of kink practitioner courses or erotica and storytelling courses or somatics courses, but it's been very difficult to find something that integrates and weaves together these disciplines in a way in which they can build off of one another and really allow us to sink into a depth of experience that is really tough to attain over a period of time. So this is something that we're incredibly passionate about, and that the Erotic Underworld is truly walking that walk of bringing those things together, of allowing us to slow down, to decrease that sense of false urgency, to take up that space, and to really make that descent with a variety of different modalities and skills that we're learning together at our fingertips.
Well said.
Thanks.
Truly. I would love to dig into your answer a little bit more, Lauren. You both seem to have quite a bit of overlap in your work, but also things that are different and the expertise that you bring. I'm really curious, how did you both get here to facilitating a course together, and what strengths do each of you bring to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, as a storyteller, it's important for me to acknowledge at least Hannah's and my friendship origin story, which I'm sure we have different accounts of. But, we're really, I think this is a full circle moment, at least from my perspective, because we met virtually through a Facebook Live that I randomly found that Hannah was doing, that was her own weaving of the Hades and Persephone myth, and this beautiful retelling of the myth where Persephone is making her own sovereign choice around becoming, the queen of the underworld. And as soon as I met Hannah, I was like, wow, this person is so powerful and so rooted in herself and bringing this type of magic to the world. And for me, that was incredibly inspiring. And I am such a deep lover of mythology and storytelling, and have always been someone who writes story, who plays in the realm of story. And frankly, to answer your question around, what strengths am I bringing to the table, a lot of my background is in kind of this fusion of communal conflict resolution and helping provide frameworks, and very digestible frameworks for really tough problem sets, whether that's kind of interpersonal or communal, and bringing that down to earth in a very practical way and making it digestible for people to understand, how it is that we move in grounded ways from what seems really difficult to a sense of possible understanding. And my journey has also led me to kink, and to becoming a kink educator, which is something I'm very deeply passionate about, because I recognize that there were limiting beliefs and there were deeply held stories in me that I had been sheltering and nurturing for a long time that were not mine, that were actually, that felt very punitive, that felt very difficult for me to move through the world in a way where I could actually bring some of my gifts and feel some of my joy and my pleasure and my sense of play and playfulness. So being able to move into a space where, after about 4.5, 5 years of deep learning through mentors in the kink space, and a huge shout out to a few of them as well, including Sinclair Sexsmith, who's a wonderful pro-dom and writer. I found that kink was this very incredible way of expressing the edges of myself that I didn't feel like I was even allowed to explore. And then being in spaces and learning skills where, like, those types of feelings of self-liberation become just the norm in a space, brings so much possibility as well for others to be who they are, to express their own gifts. So the skill sets I bring are very much rooted in kind of those three areas of, like, deep storytelling, a lot of, career practicing in how do we make things digestible, how do we help people understand what seems to be very complex and break it down into actionable steps so they can actually experience it. And then learning the skill sets around kink and around deeper motivations, really, for like why kink, why this healing modality, and bringing that to the table. How about you, Hannah?
I love hearing about your story. I just love hearing about all of the different layers, that make you who you are. And of course, it's really just the tip of the iceberg. So yeah, that was beautiful to listen to. As far as my own journey, I mean, as I was hearing you share, I was thinking back to, like when did this really start for me? And my mind went to like being a fourth or fifth grader who like stole my grandmother's romance novels. And we're like reading the sex scenes to like the other kids on the back of the school bus. And just thinking about how
That's so perfect for you.
it's true. Staying up all night, like reading, erotica with like a flashlight.
Harriet the Spy style, like under your blankets with a flashlight, like a private investigator.
Literally that kid. And so my experience with eroticism, even from a young age, was actually very mental because I was reading about it and I was learning about, crafting these worlds and these archetypes and feeling, the way that my body would respond. And there was this aliveness that came through. But then as I got older and I had this understanding of eroticism in my mind and this very advanced understanding that was really cerebral, I started to explore in ways that were actually very uninitiated and had some very difficult experiences early on with sexuality and exploration. And really the root of it, as I look back now, was, wanting to feel what I felt in those novels. But not knowing how to translate that over into connection with other people. And what I would often experience was just like too much, too soon, too fast. And it actually shut me down. I was a very, very sensitive little being and it shut me down. And it wasn't until I was well into my 20s that I discovered the worlds of Tantra as a way to start to de-armor and open back up my own energy body and reaccess my capacity to stir eros within myself. But even in the realms of Tantra, I often found that I was putting myself in situations where I was overextending and pouring myself into other people or not fully honoring my own boundaries. And that's where I started to learn more about the different frameworks and communication tools that come through the realms of kink. And I started to explore more about, sexual shadow work and how these really, how these parts of ourselves play out in connection and in relationship, and the importance of getting to know our shadows and giving them opportunities to express consciously so that they don't have to, play up unconsciously and insert themselves into relationships and situations. So this is a little bit about how I've gotten into the work that I have. And as far as my friendship with Laura, I mean, as they mentioned, we met through the virtual realms. So again, starting in this almost like disembodied space. Never forget the first time we actually met in person was during COVID. Laura came to visit me, and we went on a hike around the lake by my mother's house, like in almost like 8 inches of snow. And there was this one point where there were these like steep steps that were completely ice over. And Laura and I just got on our hands and knees and started clawing our way up this hill. And then I was like, okay, this person can hang. Like we're not afraid to go on adventures and go to difficult places together. And it was such a bonding moment that built so much trust. And it was very embodied. It was, like we had to dig into like the monsters, the like ice monsters in our souls to like get up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that we collaborated around our first storytelling and embodiment collaboration, the Lilith Heart. And it was just such a joyful collaboration to tune in with the archetype of Lilith and how she embodies through us, and to reclaim that story as a story of empowerment. And that's really where the erotic underworld was birthed. You know, we didn't really know it at the time, but this little foray into embodied myth and story reclamation was, I think, where, you know, the seeds of our creativity really entangled. And of course, as Laura has explored more about kink and I've explored more about Tantra and somatics, we've shared with each other about the knowledge and experiences that we've gained, you know, what's really worked, what we've seen, you know, really being cutting edge and pioneering in these realms, and what we're longing for, what we're not seeing expressed. And it was just so fascinating to experience how the work and the explorations that we were doing in different fields started to actually fill in the holes of each other's experience. And so that's how this came through. I want to learn more from Laura, and Laura, I know, or I think,
Oh, I definitely want to learn more from you, for sure.
great, glad it's
And
me.
and I do want to say as well, just like building off of what Hannah is sharing, that there's something that we realized about kind of siloing these fields that just feels like not right anymore. There's like an interconnection and interweaving and a coming together that's so missing. And that really is kind of like pioneering in the sense of bringing it back to the fullness of who we are, in the sense of our full imagination, our full capacities with like the depths we can go to, but also bringing it back to the body. And I can speak for myself with my journey through kink. A lot of different classes I've taken focus so much on the techniques of like picking up the implement, picking up a flogger, you know, focusing on the communication pieces, that very kind of intellectual exchange. That's so critical. And those communication frameworks are some of the best that I've ever seen. And there was a sore feeling, a tender ache I had around where's the discussion of the felt sense of how this is fully feeling in the body beyond just a yes, no, maybe list, or beyond a momentary consent check and things like that. Where's the deeper why? Where's the motivation beyond the question of how do you want to feel in this moment, which in and of itself is a pretty radical question for a lot of spaces to center the feeling body. But what about, you know, how it is that we really care for ourselves and others in this journey? And that's where I've been so inspired by Hannah's work as well, because she's been asking some really big questions and pushing the envelope in the Tantra space and the embodiment space where she is. And you can speak to your own areas on that. But I think that it's our different steps along this journey and the knowledge that we've gleaned and also brought into our own bodies and experiences that make the complementarity of our strengths so powerful. And I think that, you know, we're certainly, as two water signs, certainly not afraid to ask the deeper questions or plummet a little bit deeper around something. And that's an energy that we bring for sure to this exploration.
Yeah, I love that you brought in, you know, the Plutonian desire for depth, because that really is what I've been also craving in the Tantra realms. You know, so much of these neo Tantra practices that are explored are very upregulating, and are very much about like bringing that Kundalini energy up through the chakras to connect with source above. And what I've been missing and craving is just more of this like slowing down and dropping into the lower centers, and even getting down like into the depth and the muck and the dirt and the shadow, and rolling around in that in a way that isn't fixated on, you know, purification or transcendence, but actually enjoying the muck and the challenge of our experience and the beauty that can be found in the depths, in the realms of death and shadow and initiation by fire. So learning more and more somatic practices around nervous system regulation and what it means to actually bring our energy down and to deepen those roots, you know, not just into the earth, but through the earth and out the other side. And using the descent that we see in so many myths, like the myths of Hades and Persephone, or Inanna and Ereshkigal, you know, using these ancient myths as models of how not just to go up and out with our initiation process, but to actually go down, down, down and through. And as I've been tapping in more with these practices, that's where, you know, kink and scene crafting and getting to actually embody archetypes and have experiences of playing with these energies and these power dynamics with others has been, you know, such a phenomenal way to explore this energy again in an embodied way and in a relational way. So there's so much more to be said about all of this. And of course, that is why we invite you into the erotic underworld with us so that we can start to pick apart these pieces and play more.
How sweet to hear more about your myth with each other, right? In a myth focused space and see a little snapshot of your co-facilitation dynamic. What it struck me in your answers is like how timely this course is as we're seeing some really big relational wounds in the larger collective, and it's a time for us to be in the muck. I'm curious to hear more how this course specifically supports in addressing these relational wounds. If you could expand on that.
Oh, I mean, I would say that this feeling of descent or this experience of descent as initiation is one of the most important pieces that this course brings to the table because we are going through an underworld journey collectively right now with everything that is bubbling up to the surface, things that have been, you know, going on behind the scenes in those Plutonian realms actually coming to light, and people becoming very dysregulated because of how much information, how much horror and challenge and fear, you know, and in many ways, like very justified fear is coming to the surface. But when we're in, you know, that heightened state, our trauma response is often to want to flee or fight or even freeze and not know how to move forward, not know what to do to help. And to counteract that, we have to learn how to dip back into ourselves, to I wouldn't say escape all of the information, but actually attune to our own systems in relation to what is going on and actually process those fears and that grief within ourselves in order to better resource through our life force, through our creativity, through our capacity to nurture harmonious relationships, even in the midst of struggle. So this descent aspect of dipping into ourselves, learning to regulate our systems, understanding the power dynamics at play and how we navigate those dynamics within ourselves and in relation to others. And also being able to, from that place, kind of span back and see the bigger picture and get a better sense of how our unique gifts, our capacity for expression can plug in important ways to really help to imagine a pathway forward, and bring our gifts to the table to help to make that pathway emerge in real time. So again, tip of the iceberg, but those are the pieces that feel really alive and really important to me. And I'm really excited to hear Laura's answer to this question too.
Because I have my thinking face on. There's so many things it's a beautiful question, Madison. And there's so many layers to that question, and I don't know that I'll be able to do it full justice in just a few minutes. But I can say that there are a few pieces that come to me off the bat. And one is that our dominant paradigm, at least here in the United States, is one of white supremacy. It's one of a perversion of power that glorifies violence as a system of power over and under. And it trickles into all the stories that we have. It suffuses the way people are treated and dehumanized. It takes power in and of itself and makes it into something that is weaponized. And I think one of the aspects of kink that I've been so drawn to is that when you have power exchange, when you have power play, it really becomes about reclamation of that misuse of power, where even if you're playing on one side of the slash, as it's called, as a dominant or a submissive, there is an agreement in place that is consensual, that is negotiated, that is about true power with. It's about co-creation. It's about playing a certain role to have an experience that enriches both parties, that is woven together. And that is something that I feel incredibly passionate about seeing more of in our communities, in the ways in which we relate to one another, in our communication frameworks, in the ways that we approach each other, in breaking down stereotypes and assumptions and expectations, is really coming with that lens of power with, of generosity, of non-judgment, of integrity, and being able to sit with the stories that we have in relation to one another and really understand, what's behind those things and how do those keep us from a deeper layer of connection. That's one area that I feel is so important these days because there's such a push and such a disinformation scheme to polarize us, to make us more violent or more apathetic or more hopeless, or to play upon these huge emotions that we have of fear and freeze, and to take us out of our agency and out of our choice and out of our sense of co-creation and honestly out of our sense of internal power. And I think that, the quote that comes to me, that's been coming to me over and over and over, especially in some of the queer circles I've been in, is a quote from the height of the AIDS crisis, which was about, I'm gonna botch it because I always botch quotes, but the gist of the quote was, we bury our friends in the morning, we attend the rally in the afternoon, and we dance furiously in the evening. And there's not just a space for, but a necessity of becoming more human. You saw it with Bad Bunny in the Super Bowl, celebrating love and culture and togetherness and embodiment and passion and all these different things that bring us together as human beings, that celebrate our commonality of humanness and that really center care as resistance. And this course centers care for the self and for other. And I think that that is really at the core of what it is that we are trying to create right now, is a sense of deeper connection, both a sense of deeper connection inside and an understanding and awareness of what that looks like, and then a deeper sense of connection with others as a power with kind of care instead of a power over or power under kind of control. And yeah, I'll stop there because there's a huge high horse here and I'll get off of it. So I'm off the horse.
I appreciate your responses, and what really struck me and what I'm sitting here thinking is this course seems to offer essentially a space to imagine a new way of being with each other, and a new way, or perhaps the way has been consistent, but it's not in the dominant culture or
Yes.
the power over culture, and it's a space for you to begin to practice that. So then this, as below, so above, perhaps, instead of as above, so below. You have the power over you. Instead, you are offering spaces for people to practice the way they want to be in the world and the world they want to see, and how important that is in these heartbreaking times and times that are really demanding our presence and our embodiment. What a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge, you know, the ways that oppression and power dynamics exist in our own internal system.
Mhm.
And, you know, give that the attention and the resolution needed so that it doesn't have to play out externally. So I love, Madison, that you named that it's both about, you know, imagining these alternatives, but then also about actually gaining the skills and the opportunity to play with and experience these different ways of being. And I just want to say, Laura, that was not a high horse. That was a like exactly in my heart and my womb and my pussy horse. And I just love the way that you
Mm.
speak to these really, really important elements. And I can't wait to be in this container together. So for those who do want to join us, you can find the registration link at embodyenchantment.com. And of course, Laura can speak to where you can find out more about their work as well.
Absolutely. You can find my work on Linktree as well as my Instagram. And we're so excited to take this journey together. And what a beautiful time to gather together as well.
Beautiful. And we'll make sure to have the links for everything in the description, as well as if you're watching this on Instagram, you could probably find them in the bio of whichever account you're watching this on. And I just want to say a deep thank you to both you, Lauren and Hannah, for taking the time today, and then this beautiful offering in the world at such a important time.
Thank you so much, Madison. It's always a joy to connect with you.
Oh, me too.
Likewise. Thank you, Madison. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks, Lauren.